Hey guys, tonight we're slipping beneath a tattered wool blanket in a smoky, flickering cottage somewhere in the year 1324. The fire's dying low, chickens are rustling nearby, and you've just jolted awake, except it's not morning yet. No alarm, no sunrise, just that weird middle-of-the-night pause, and you're not alone in it. Welcome to medieval sleep, where waking up at midnight isn't abnormal, it's part of the plan. You might think something's wrong, but Noth is your first sleep. You lay down just after sundown, exhausted from a day of mucking fields or spinning wool, and like clockwork, you sleep hard until midnight or so. Then, bam, your eyes open, like someone flipped a switch. And everyone else in your village? They're up too, talking quietly, praying, stoking the fire, sneaking off for, well, that's a tale for later. This two-part routine was called segmented sleep, and it wasn't considered weird at all. In fact, it was the way to sleep for centuries. Scholars pouring through medieval manuscripts noticed people constantly mentioning their first sleep and second sleep so clearly, nobody thought it strange to rise in the dead of night. Imagine if your boss asked why you were late and you said, "I was between sleeps." You'd get a wellness podcast deal by Tuesday. And it wasn't just peasants. Nobles, monks, even physicians of the time referenced this biphasic rhythm. They believed the period between sleeps was ideal for reflection and even digestion. Fancy that your midnight snack might be medically recommended. Historians still argue whether this pattern was universal or mostly rural, but evidence from across Europe points to it being surprisingly common. What did people do during this wakeful stretch? Some said prayers, whispering them softly in bed. Others might add wood to the fire, or check that the animals hadn't trampled the garden fence. If you were literate and lucky enough to have a candle, maybe you'd read or listen as someone else did. And if you were married, let's just say this period was often called the watch. Do with that euphemism what you will. Still, it wasn't all candlelit serenity. If you lived in a castle, you might be roused by watchmen shouting the hour or barking orders across the bailey. And in towns, the night watch clanged iron staffs to mark time, possibly ensuring nobody got decent rest. But in your simple home, it's quieter. You shift your weight on the lumpy straw mattress, trying to get comfortable again, knowing you've got another solid chunk of sleep ahead. And you might need it, because tomorrow is threshing day, or spinning, or hauling buckets from the well. Whatever it is, it's going to be physically exhausting. You don't get to snooze through a Zoom meeting with your camera off you work until your back knots and your hands blister. So that second sleep, it matters. There's even some modern science nodding to this old system. Some researchers think our bodies are naturally inclined towards segmented sleep, especially without artificial light. Left to your own rhythm, say, on a camping trip with no phone, you might notice a strange urge to wake in the middle of the night. Congratulations, you're sleeping like a medieval peasant. But it's not just the timing that's different, it's the entire relationship with sleep. There's no concept of 8 solid hours or sleep hygiene routines involving lavender sprays and blue light blockers. You just crash when it's dark, wake when your body says to, and maybe mutter a psalm or two before dozing off again. Still, you can't help but feel the draft on your toes and hear the soft creak of someone shifting beside you. Sleep comes in wave sand in this world. You ride them differently. And hey, remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The second sleep is waiting. You wake again, this time for real, but you don't want to move. The straw mattress beneath you is poking through the linen sheet, and something just scurried across your ankle. Was it a mouse? A beetle? A flea-filled straw companion with no sense of boundaries? It hardly matters. This is your bed, such as it is, and it doesn't get any better than this unless you're a noble or a monk with proper bedding and a servant to shake out the vermin. You shift slightly, trying not to rouse the rest of the bodies packed beside you. That's right, bodies, plural. You're sharing this space with your parents, your siblings, possibly a grandparent, and maybe even a cousin or two if they're staying over. Privacy? That's a luxury only the lords can afford. For the rest of us, sleep is a communal act. You learn to roll with elbows in your ribs and snores echoing like church bells. The mattress isn't really a mattress at all. It's a cloth sack stuffed with straw, dried rushes, or sometimes even heather if you're lucky. It smells earthy and itchy, and has to be refilled every few weeks when the old stuffing starts to smell worse than your uncle's boots. You have a blanketer, maybe, just a woolen cloakand. It's heavy, scratchy, and shared. Every tug risks a scolding. Everyone huddles close, not because you like each other that much, but because body heat is your only defense against the cold seeping through the timber walls. As for pillows, you might use a folded cloak, or if your family's a bit better off, a bolster stuffed with feathersif you can keep the chickens from reclaiming them. Some wealthier folk even added dried lavender to the pillow stuffing, though there's a strong chance the soothing scent was overwhelmed by the less pleasant aroma of unwashed feet and damp floors. And don't even think about pajamas. You sleep in your day, clothes minus the belt, if you remember to take it off. In winter, the idea of stripping down before bed is laughable. You wear everything you own just to stay warm. And yes, that includes your shoes sometimes. The church may preach modesty, but even the holiest folks aren't about to freeze for the sake of decency. Now, if you're thinking all this sounds like a breeding ground for pests, well, congratulations, you're absolutely right. Fleas and lice are part of the bedtime routine. You pick them off like bedtime beads on a rosary. And bedbugs? They've been around since the Romans, and they are thriving. There's a reason medieval people referred to sleeping tight. It came from tightening the ropes that supported the straw bed, not from the fantasy that you wouldn't be munched on during the night. Still, you get used to it. You even develop a kind of rhythm to the discomfort. You know when to shift, to avoid the pokey bit of straw, how to tuck your feet so they don't get nibbled, and how to breathe shallowly when someone turns over and releases a wave of cabbage-scented sleep breath. But sometimes, just sometimes, you wish you were the family pig, because at least the pig gets to sleep on warm hay by itself, in a snug sty with a roof overhead. It doesn't have to share a blanket or worry about its little brother's damp feet pressing into its spine. Historians still argue whether this level of crowded sleeping was standard across all regions or more common in colder climates and among poorer households. But most agree it was far from rare. Manuscripts and oral histories from across Europe describe communal sleep as the norm, not the exception. It was practical, it conserved warmth, and it reinforced familial bondsaw, at least made sure you knew your brother's snore pattern intimately. Occasionally, families hung curtains or made partitions, especially if they had multiple generations living under one roof. These weren't for privacy in the modern sense. They were more about keeping heat in or separating the ill from the rest of the household. Because yes, illness didn't stop at nightfall. If someone was coughing or feverish, you might find yourself trying to sleep inches away from the source of your next infection. Cozy, right? And yet, despite the discomfort and the ever-present threat of bedbugs, this was just normal. You didn't expect better. Your idea of luxury was a bed that wasn't on the dirt floor. Maybe you dreamt of being a servant in a big house, where you might sleep on a trundle bed beneath the master's four-poster, with sheets that were actually washed. But for now, you just yank the blanket back from your brother and try to find the least lumpy spot. In this world, the concept of personal space doesn't exist. Your home is a single room with a fire at the center and bedding tucked into corners, beneath lofts, or even under tables. Space is for the living, not the sleeping. Once the day's labor ends, the entire family becomes a puzzle of limbs and sighs, settling into their places like weary cogs in a machine that will start up again at dawn. Eventually, your eyes close again. You fall asleep to the sound of your mother's gentle snore, the fire crackling low, and the occasional hiss of a bug you've crushed between your shoulder and the mattress. And in this moment, with the worst of the night behind you, sleep doesn't feel so strange. It just feels medieval. You wake to something warm and feathered, clucking softly in your ear. Not a dream an actual chicken has hopped up beside your face. Again, this is what happens when you sleep in a one-room house and the animals are family too. In medieval life, the lines between barn and bedroom blur quickly. The cold doesn't care about social boundaries, and if you want to survive winter, you might have to share your bed with more than just your siblings. It starts with the livestock being brought in just before sunset. Chickens settle in crates or perch on rafters. Goats curl up in straw-lined corners. A pig might snort gently under the table. Even the family cow, if you're fortunate enough to have one, has a stall right against the back wall. You sleep with animals because they generate warmth, and in a drafty home with no insulation, body heat is a blessing. This mingling of man and beast wasn't just a peasant thing. Even wealthier homes had dogs or cats curled up near the fire. Some upper-class folks had lapdogs that weren't just decorative, they were personal heaters. A noblewoman might nestle a little hound under her covers for warmth while she dozed off. Medieval people weren't stupid. They didn't have central heating, but they had the next best thing: biology. You, on the other hand, are curled up between your little brother and a goat who smells like fermented hay. The goat snorts every few minutes, and you swear it's dreaming about eating something, probably your socks. You'd complain, but honestly, the goat's doing you a favor. Its warm, sour breath is keeping the chill off your neck. Still, it's not all cuddly barnyard charm. There's a downside to bringing animals inside, and you feel it every time you breathe in the thick, earthy stench of dung, hay, smoke, and sweat. The floor is scattered with straw to soak up messes, but that doesn't mean it's clean. You've learned to walk with your eyes open, even in the dark, unless you want a barefoot surprise. And the flies, even in winter, they cling to the warmth. You swat at one buzzing lazily by your face and grumble. Historians still debate how common this sleep with the animals setup was across all of Europe. It likely varied by climate, wealth, and custom, but for many people, especially in colder northern regions, this was just life. Records from Scandinavian settlements to alpine villages describe homes built with shared human-animal quarters, sometimes with only a knee-high wooden barrier separating you from the livestock. In monasteries and castles, the setup was better. Servants kept the animals in separate buildings, and sleeping quarters were cleaner, quieter. But for common folks like you, the idea of sleeping in a bedroom without at least one creature nearby was almost laughable. It wasn't just about warmth. Animals were valuable property, and letting them roam unsupervised outside overnight was a good way to lose them to thieves, wolves, or worse. Bringing them indoors was a matter of both security and survival. Chickens laid better if they didn't freeze. Cows gave more milk if they weren't stressed. And pigs, well, pigs just liked being wherever the food was. As you lie there, the fire down to glowing coals, the rhythm of the barnyard sleepover sets in. The chickens murmur and flutter occasionally. Someone, either your father or the goat, snores gently. You're not sure anymore, and the air is thick, still, heavy with heat and scent, but at least it isn't freezing. You wiggle deeper into the blanket and try not to think about the goose feather you just inhaled. And let's not forget the dog. Every decent medieval household had at least one. Your mutt, a scrappy brown thing with a torn ear and no name, curls up by the hearth, one eye half open. He's your first alarm system. If something stirs outside, bandits, wolves, drunk neighbors shall bark and rouse the whole house. Not that you'll do much if trouble comes, but hey, awareness is half the battle. Occasionally, your family will put a curtain up to block the animal area, if there's space and spare cloth. But it's thin, and mostly ceremonial. The smells still creep through, the sounds still echo. One kid sneezes, a chicken squawks, the dog groans, and everyone stirs for a moment before drifting back off. Sleep here isn't deep or peaceful. It's fragmented, practical, survival-oriented. It's more about enduring the night than escaping into dreams. And yet, there's comfort in the chaos. You're never truly alone. Even in the darkness, you can hear breathing, feel movement, sense life all around you. In modern times, it might feel invasive, even suffocating. But here, in this cold and drafty place, that closeness is the warmth. Of course, sometimes it goes wrong. A startled cow can crash through a wall. A sick pig can infect the whole family. Disease spreads quickly in these quarters. That's the other reason monks and nobles keep animals at a distance. They know how fast a fever can burn through a village. But for you, tonight, the risk is just another part of the background noise. Eventually, the dog sighs. A rooster gives a half-hearted crow too early. You close your eyes and try to ignore the chicken stepping on your arm. One more hour until sunrise. One more hour with the goat's warm belly at your back. You take it, because sleep is precious, even when it comes with feathers, fur, and the ever-present scent of manure. You've barely rubbed the sleep from your eyes when you hear a sharp whisper, "Get up, we're late," and suddenly everyone's stumbling into their morning shuffle. Except, it's still pitch black outside. You blink, confused. But then you remember, today's frost means hauling water early, and the fire needs restarting. You yank your tunic straight, and squint around the smoky room, shivering. You're fully dressed already because of course you are. You never undressed. That's just how it works here. You sleep in what you wore that day, and you'll probably wear it again tomorrow. For medieval people, the idea of specific sleepwear wasn't just foreign, it was impractical. Undressing took time, washing clothes took effort, and warmth, that was priority number one. So what do you wear to bed? If you're poor, everything. Shirt, hose, wool tunic, cap, maybe even boots if the floor's wet or icy. Some folks even sleep in gloves, which sounds ridiculous until you've tried making it through a January night in a timber-framed house with wind whistling through the walls like a ghostly choir. You might have a cloak pulled tight or a bit of sheepskin, but that's it. But wait, you've heard rumours maybe from the old tanner's apprentice that some rich people sleep naked, completely, luxuriously bare beneath silk sheets or fine linen. Supposedly, it's good for circulation. Supposedly, it helps the body breathe. But really, it's about showing off. You sleep like that only if you're wealthy enough to live in a house that doesn't feel like a meat locker every night, or if you have servants to keep the fire going while you snooze. And if you're a monk, well, that's a different beast altogether. Monks were expected to wear their habits even in sleep, and many took vows that banned soft bedding entirely. Sleeping naked? Unthinkable. Some even believed that sleeping unclothed opened the body to sin, both real and imagined. Temptation, after all, lurked even in dreams. Still, people were inconsistent. Some medieval physicians warned against sleeping fully clothed, arguing that it blocked natural airflow and caused noxious vapours to build in the body. Others swore by a nightshirt loose, breathable, and just warm enough. Historians still argue whether nightwear was more common among the merchant class or strictly reserved for the elite, but the evidence suggests that once you hit a certain income level, you could afford the luxury of designated sleep clothes. And believe it or not, there were trends. In noble households, fashion didn't sleep. Wealthy men might wear elaborately embroidered nightcaps, while noble women favoured fine linen chemises. These weren't your grandma's flannel pyjamas. These were delicate, expensive status symbols. If you visited a noble's chamber at night, you were expected to notice. Always notice. For you, though, it's all about layers. Not for fashion, but for survival. You're wearing so many garments it's hard to bend your knees properly. And that's just the way it is. You've slept in these clothes so many times, you can't remember the last time they were fully clean. But they've moulded to your shape, like a second skinnichi, woolen, and occasionally flea-infested. Now, here's a fun twist. There's a small chance you're part of a rural household that believes sleeping with your clothes off invites sickness, not just a chillaxual demonic illness. Some old folk sayings warned that a bare body in bed made it easier for spirits to slip in and wreak havoc. Whether you believe it or not, it's just one more reason to keep your hose on. And yet, despite all this, you do sometimes long for the fantasy of a feather bed. Just once, you'd like to stretch out under clean sheets in a warm chamber, with nothing poking your ribs and no goat snoring beside you. The noble version of sleep seems more like a holiday than a routine, except even that has its downsides. Rich folk may have soft beds, but they also have more to lose. Their rooms are drafty stone vaults, hard to heat and haunted by servants creeping in and out. Their pillows may be stuffed with goose feathers, but their minds are full of politics, debts, and threats. You, at least, sleep the sleep of someone too tired to worry about court drama. Monks, meanwhile, sleep light and upright. Yes, upright. Some orders believed that lying flat encouraged sloth, or worse, sinful dreams, so they dozed in chairs, or sat on narrow benches, heads drooping, robes wrapped tight, and if they nodded off too deeply, a supervisor might snap them awake. Rest was a necessity, not a pleasure, and certainly not something to be enjoyed too much. One particularly strict order even had monks sleep in their choir stalls, upright, beneath no blankets at all. You try that once and you'll never complain about your scratchy wool cloak again. But here in your little home, it's about balance. You dress for bed in whatever makes the night bearable. You might pull off your belt, loosen your collar, or even remove your shoes if you're feeling brave. And if you're lucky, the fire holds just enough heat to make the air less painful. Eventually, you lie back, arms folded under your head, and stare up at the dark ceiling beams. Somewhere a nobleman is turning over in his four-poster bed, and a monk is nodding off mid-prayer. But you just hope your little brother doesn't kick you in the stomach again. There's nothing glamorous about this sleep, but it's real, honest, human, and somehow, even in your scratchy layers and overworked socks, you fall asleep once more, cocooned not in luxury, but in necessity. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, your eyes snap open again. No rooster, no dog just. The hush of a sleeping house and a fire now reduced to faint orange coals. You're not alone in your wakefulness. Across the room, your older sister is whispering to someone. Your father is sitting up, quietly feeding the hearth with a few scraps of wood. And outside, muffled footsteps crunch over frost as someone makes their way down the lane. It's the hour between sleeps again, the strange, secret space medieval folks knew all too well. This isn't insomnia. This is expected. In fact, you don't even call it waking up. It's part of the rhythm. First sleep is over. Second sleep hasn't begun. And here you are in the liminal hour, when the night is still but somehow alive with soft noise and flickering light. This interval lasts maybe an hour or two, and what people do with it, well, that depends entirely on who they are and what's on their mind. For some, it's a sacred time. You might kneel by your bed, whisper a psalm or two, or silently mouth the Lord's Prayer. The Church taught that the soul was particularly open in these hours, that prayers reached further in the quiet before dawn. Monks would rise for matins at this hour, chanting in cold stone chapels while the rest of the world dreamed. Even common folk often took a moment for reflection, lighting a candle if they had one, pressing their hands together beneath the blanket to avoid the cold. But not everyone spent this time on their knees. Many simply talked. Families whispered in the dark, trading small stories, or murmuring about what tomorrow might bring. Couples sometimes shared secrets here, the kind you didn't say aloud in daylight. In fact, one of the most surprising uses for this midnight window was intimacy. Medieval medical texts and popular wisdom alike often claimed that this period rested, relaxed, and safely tucked in was ideal for conception. The body was warm, the mind calm, and the house, at last, quiet. You'll never look at the phrase nightlife the same way again. Of course, it wasn't always so cozy. Sometimes you got up to tend to chores. If the animals needed water or the fire had gone out completely, someone had to move. You'd pull on a cloak, grip a tallow candle, and fumble around the darkness doing the same tasks you did in daylight, just colder and with less visibility. The candle might flicker ominously, casting your shadow 20 feet tall on the wall as you crept past snoring siblings and livestock. And sometimes, you'd sneak out, because not everyone in medieval villages stayed indoors between first and second sleep. In towns and cities, the streets were surprisingly active during this interval. Bakers were already rising to start dough. Guards patrolled walls and gates. And certain, less respectable types wandered alleys, meeting in shadows. If you were a servant, you might use this time to run a quick errand for the master. If you were a teenager, you might use it to meet a friend behind the church stable. Just a quick chat, maybe. Historians still argue whether this segment of wakefulness was purely practical or if it held deeper cultural significance. Some believe it evolved naturally in response to darkness and a lack of artificial light. Others think it was shaped more by spiritual doctrine and social routines. But whatever the cause, it wasn't treated like a problem, it was normal. Waking in the night didn't mean your sleep was broken. It meant your body understood the rhythm of the dark. And there's something weirdly beautiful about it. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and listen. The quiet is thick and soft, like a wool blanket over your ears. The fire crackles gently. Someone shifts beneath a blanket. A goat snorts in its sleep. And for a few brief minutes, you feel like the only person awake in the world, even though you know you're not. If you had the means, maybe you'd strike a flint and read a page of something scripture, a saint's life, a bit of verse. In wealthier households, a lamp might already be lit, and the lady of the house would be curled in bed reading a prayer book or composing a letter. In monasteries, the midnight bell has rung, and a row of robed figures chants beneath stained glass shadows. There's solemnity in the hour, but there's also a strange, practical calm. Eventually, your eyes grow heavy again. Your body knows what's next. The second sleep approaches not as deep as the first, but restful all the same. You lie back, shifting just enough to tuck your hands beneath your blanket. Across the room, the candle your father lit gutters and dies. Darkness, once again. You close your eyes and listen to the last few murmurs fading around you. And just like that, the world grows still. You let go of the flickering thoughts that visited you between sleeps, and let the second wave carry you away. By the time the first grey hints of dawn creep through the shutters, your second sleep has done its job. Sort of. You're awake, but not exactly rested. Then again, nobody in the village expects to feel refreshed. You've had just enough sleep to get back to work without collapsing in the mud. That's good enough. Today's tasks won't wait, and neither will your uncle's snores, which have already started echoing like low thunder from the corner. But before we dive into your morning, let's step briefly into another world, the kind only a noble or a monk might recognize. You know how you sleep, itchy, crowded, in a room thick with animal breath and family feet. But high-born lords and abbots, their sleep looks very different, at least on the surface. Take the nobleman. He doesn't just have a bed. He has a chamber. Big wooden doors separate his sleeping space from the noise of servants and kitchens. His bed sits tall. So tall, in fact, that he needs steps to climb into it. 4 carved posts rise up from the frame, draped with velvet or thick linen curtains. They don't just look fancy, they're practical too. Those heavy drapes trap warmth and block drafts. And maybe, just maybe, muffle the sound of his wife telling him for the 4th time that he left his muddy boots on her tapestries again. His mattress? Stuffed with goose feathers, of course. The sheets are cleaner than yours anyway, and sometimes scented with lavender. A servant fluffs the pillows. Another pokes the fire. One might even warm a stone by the hearth and tuck it under the covers before his lordship climbs in. Imagine that. A medieval version of a heated blanket, except it's a hot rock wrapped in cloth. Now compare that to the monks. Their chamber sif, you can even call them, that are the opposite of plush. A single cell, bare stone, maybe a thin blanket, and no sprawling across soft feather beds here. Depending on the order, monks might be required to sleep sitting upright, their heads bowed in humility. Even when lying down was allowed, the beds were narrow and the bedding stiff. Comfort was not the goal. The point was discipline, resisting temptation, keeping the flesh from getting ideas. And dreams? Well, monks didn't just sleep, they monitored themselves for sin even while unconscious. Some believed that Satan could whisper into dreams, planting impure thoughts that would sprout in daylight. There were even manuals on what to do if you experienced a troubled night. Spoiler alert. They usually involved prayer, fasting, or more chores. Historians still debate how strictly these rules were followed. Some think the monks bent the rules on cold nights or feigned discipline when the abbot passed through. Others believe many followed the routines rigidly, driven by fear, faith, or sheer habit. Either way, monks were the original sleep minimalists. But for the nobles, sleep wasn't just comfort, it was status. If a guest entered their bedchamber, everything was a performance. The bed wasn't just for sleeping, it was a throne. Royal audiences were sometimes held in bed. Marriages were consummated in front of witnesses. Even childbirth happened in that big, curtained space, surrounded by ladies and midwives whispering prayers between contractions. It was the medieval version of multitasking, and nobles had sleep schedules as theatrical as their furniture. They might stay up long after sunset, playing dice, reading poetry, or conspiring with allies. They didn't follow natural light cycles the way peasants did. Their sleep was flexible, fragmented not by biology, but by strategy. But back in your world, there's no lounging. The sun isn't even fully up, and already you hear your name being called. Time to haul water, fix the fence, or gather firewood. Still, you can't help imagining what it might be like to sleep in a room that didn't smell like smoke and chickens, to lie in a bed that didn't require constant repositioning to avoid a pokey bit of straw. And yet, for all the nobles' soft pillows and hot stones, sleep wasn't necessarily better for them. The constant threat of war, the burden of land disputes, the need to maintain alliances, those worries crept into bed with them. Their dreams were haunted by politics and poisoned goblets. Your dreams, on the other hand, are haunted mostly by goats. It's all about perspective. A nobleman might envy your deep, dreamless exhaustion. A monk might see your morning grogginess as a spiritual danger. And you? You just want to get through another day without stepping barefoot in pig droppings. The house stirs fully now. Someone groans. Someone else stretches with a crack of joints. Your mother is already reaching for the ladle. Porridge will be ready soon, and with it, the start of another long day. But as you rub your eyes and stretch out your legs, you catch one last glimpse of the bed corner, and imagine for a moment that it's a feather-filled canopy in a room without drafts. That thought alone is almost enough to keep you warm. You try not to make a sound as you tiptoe toward the corner, candle stub in hand, hoping to avoid waking your sister again. But it's no use. She groans, flips over, and mutters something about nightmares. You sigh. Just another morning in the cramped shuffle of medieval life. And as you light the candle and crouch over the cold floorboards, one unpleasant reality hits you harder than the morning chill. You have to pee. There's no bathroom, no chamber built for privacy, just a clay pot tucked behind a curtainer, if you're lucky, an actual wooden seat over a pit latrine outside. But it's still dark, freezing, and the pot is closer. You grab it with 2 fingers and try not to breathe through your nose. That thing hasn't been emptied in, well, too long. But the alternative is worse. A trip outside means fumbling with the door, tripping over the goat, and risking a full-body shiver from the icy wind that slices across the yard. So you do your business quickly, replace the lid, and slide the pot back where it lives. The unsung hero of medieval comfort. Even nobles didn't escape the awkward realities of nighttime needs. Chamber pots were everywhere, hidden beneath beds, tucked under chairs, and quietly tended to by servants. Some lords had close stools, little wooden boxes with padded seats and removable bowls. Very stylish, very stinky, but still better than braving the courtyard in the dead of night while wearing a linen nightshirt and cursing the moon. But back in your house, it's not just about the pot. It's about the whole routine, the soft shuffle of feet, the hiss of a whisper, the rustle of straw and wool as someone stirs. Medieval nights weren't as silent as we imagine. Even after dark, homes were filled with the occasional clink of metal, the low thrum of snoring, and sometimes the unmistakable thud of someone stumbling into a bucket. One moment, you're returning to your blanket. The next, you've stubbed your toe on the hearth and are cursing in your head because your grandmother's rosary beads are just within earshot. You hop silently, grimacing, and try not to wake anyone else. You'd think after all these years, you'd remember exactly where everything is, but the fire's glow is nearly gone, and your feet always seem to find the worst possible spot. Feet, by the way, are a nightly battlefield. They're cold, always cold. Wool socks exist, but they're scratchy, and nobody in your house owns more than 1 or 2 pairs. Most nights, you tuck your feet under someone else's legs for warmth and pray they don't notice. If they do, there's a 50-50 chance they'll swat you in their sleep. And when it's your turn to wake and stoke the fire, you move like a ghost. Every coal is precious. If you let the hearth go completely out, you'll have to borrow fire from a neighbor literally walking house to house with a bucket of embers. So you nudge a log closer, blow gently, and coax a weak flame back to life. The light flickers, finally illuminating the room again in soft amber. It's like holding the sun in your hands, even if it smells like soot and boiled onions. Historians still debate how warm these homes actually were. Some argue that once you got a decent fire going, the insulation like packed earth walls or thatched roofs did a decent job. Others say that, unless you had multiple hearths or stone walls, the heat vanished faster than your patience. Either way, it's clear that fire wasn't just for cooking. It was your heater, your nightlight, and your alarm system, all in one. And then there's the candle. You keep it short to save wax, letting it gutter low while you finish your tasks. Candles weren't cheap. Tallow ones, made from animal fat, smoked terribly and smelled worse. Beeswax candles were cleaner, but expensive, often reserved for churches and the nobility. Your family probably molds their own from leftover drippings, and you treat every inch like gold. If the candle dies, you grope in darkness, guided only by memory and the occasional stubbed toe. It's a wonder more people didn't fall into their own chamber pots at night, really. And let's talk about the hallways if you even have them. For wealthier families with multiple rooms, nighttime trips become little adventures. Nobles in castles and manors have to navigate drafty stone corridors, their way lit only by servants or flickering torches. Sometimes they use slippers with thick soles or wrap their feet in cloth to muffle the sound. One too loud step, and the dogs bark. The baby cries. The household wakes. No pressure. If you lived in a castle, You might even have a servant whose job was to escort you at night to carry a candle, open doors, and help you find your way to the chamber pot without disaster. Imagine being so fancy you have someone help you pee at 2 a.m., the dream. Of course, back in your reality, there's no escort, no thick carpet, just cracked floorboards, a chilly breeze from a wall that doesn't quite seal shut, and the steady noise of someone sleep, talking about turnips. Still, there's something oddly peaceful about it all. You've done this routine so many times, it's second nature. Pee quietly, avoid the pot's rim, stoke the fire, check the door bolt, crawl back under the blanket, and try to steal the warm corner before your sister notices. Eventually, you nestle in again, the familiar scratch of wool at your chin. The fire is humming now. A soft glow dances on the ceiling beams. The candle is nearly out, the room hushed. You exhale slowly. Despite everything, the stink, the cold, the near-death experience with the water bucket, you're almost comfortable again, just as long as nobody else wakes up. You don't remember falling back asleep. 1 minute you're staring at the flickering shadows above you, and the next, you're deep in a dream involving a talking pig and a floating loaf of rye bread. It makes perfect sense while it's happening. Medieval dreams are strange, slippery things woven from the threads of cold, hunger, prayer, and superstition. And in your world, dreams aren't just nonsense to be laughed off. They might mean something, maybe even everything. When you wake, it's with a start. The dream is already fading, but a few images linger: your mother's face, the moon hanging low, something about a dog with antlers. You lie there blinking, trying to decide whether this was just a product of straw poking your back, or if it means you should avoid the well today. In the medieval mind, dreams were never just dreams. Sleep and the supernatural are close cousins in this world. People believe that when you sleep, your soul drifts, sometimes wandering, sometimes witnessing, sometimes intercepted. Nightmares are often blamed on demons, spirits, or unrepented sins. A restless night might mean a restless conscience. And a good dream? That could be a divine message, or at least a tip-off about what's coming. Dream interpretation is a respected craft, not just the babbling of bored peasants. In fact, there are books, yes, books devoted entirely to decoding dreams. Scholars and clerics have catalogued them. If you dream of falling, it could mean pride. If you see water, it might mean change. Teeth falling out? Could be death. Could be indigestion. Could be both. And it's not just clerics. The old woman who sells herbs down by the well claims she can read your dreams like scripture. She says she was born with the gift. Everyone calls her Tansy, even though that's definitely not her real name. She'll nod slowly as you describe your floating bread dream, and then hand you a satchel of dried fennel and wormwood to settle the visions. You thank her and move on, but part of you still clutches that pouch a little tighter when night comes. Medieval sleep is tangled with astrology too. People time their bedtime based on moon phases and planetary hours. Born under Mars? Be careful, your dreams may be violent tonight. Venus in ascendance? Don't be surprised if your thoughts wander toward forbidden affections while you sleep. You never thought the stars could affect your blanket time, but here we are. Historians still argue how widespread and deeply believed this dream magic truly was. Was it mainstream belief, or more of a fringe curiosity? The truth is likely a blend. In towns and monasteries, people might turn to scripture before symbols. But in villages like yours, where tales pass from mouth to mouth, dreams are part of your vocabulary. They fill the quiet hours between chores and become the basis for warnings, advice, even matchmaking. And let's be honest, when your days are hard, muddy, and backbreaking, dreams offer something rare: unpredictability, a spark of chaos in a life that's otherwise ruled by seasons, duties, and aches. When a dream shows you flying or swimming in wine, it doesn't matter what it means. It just feels good. Even if you wake up with straw in your ear and a chicken staring directly at you. But dreams don't just bring visions, they also bring fear. Night terrors are often believed to be the work of malicious spirits. Some call them night hags. Others say it's a demon squatting on your chest. You've heard of neighbours waking with scratches, claiming they fought off a spectre in their sleep. Whether it's real or just the straw poking too hard, you learn to respect the stories. Some people try to protect themselves. You know of families who hang iron keys above their beds to ward off spirits, or who sleep with rosemary under the pillow to keep dreams sweet. Your cousin swears that a clove of garlic near the bed keeps away nightmares, though it might just keep away everyone. And if all else fails, there's prayer. A quick blessing before sleep, a sign of the cross traced in the air, and maybe the invocation of a saint who specializes in nighttime troubles like Saint Raphael or Saint Dymphna. And if you're lucky enough to remember your dreams clearly, you might whisper them to a friend or elder in the morning, but only the good ones. Sharing a bad dream aloud is said to make it more likely to come true. So you keep the nightmares locked away behind your teeth and let the sunlight burn them out slowly. Monks took dreams very seriously. Some recorded them in journals, believing they were divine communications attests. Visions of fire, water, angels, or strange creatures were analyzed, debated, and sometimes even shared with the abbot. A dream might lead to extra fasting, prayer, or even a pilgrimage. In contrast, dreams deemed foolish or worldly were considered dangerous distractions. Sleep was holy, but not indulgent. Even royalty got caught up in dream lore. Kings hired dream readers. Queens whispered visions to their confessors. Some of the biggest decisions in history were influenced, at least in part, by what someone saw behind closed eyes. You wonder, lying there, if your silly bread-floating pig dream might have changed a battle if it had happened to the right person. Eventually, the dream fog fades completely, replaced by the harsh clarity of cold air and early light. You stretch your arms, yawn, and let out a long breath. Another dream, another night. No demons, no prophecies. Just a weird story you'll tell someone when the workday gets dull. You sit up slowly, brush the straw from your sleeves, and step over the sleeping dog. Morning is here. The dream world is gone. But maybe, just maybe, you'll keep that pouch of fennel from Tansy nearby. You never know when you'll need it. The morning chores are done. Your hands are sore, and your tunic smells like smoke, sweat, and something you'd rather not identify. You'd give anything to crawl back into bed, but you can't. Not until tonight. If you want a good night's sleep in this world, you've got to earn it. And even then, sleep doesn't always come easy. That's why people all over the village, Eric or poor, young or old, are constantly on the lookout for sleep remedies. Because when sleep slips through your fingers, things can get strange fast. You're not the only one who's ever had trouble drifting off. In a world with no melatonin gummies, no white noise apps, and certainly no podcasts to lull you into oblivion, people turned to the tools they had: herbs, charms, and more than a few bizarre brews. Tonight, your grandmother hands you a cup of something warm and bitter-smelling. She tells you it'll help you sleep. You don't ask what's in it. You just drink and try not to gag. Turns out it's a mix of poppy seeds, milk, and crushed chamomile. Could be worse, at least it's not owl broth. That's right. Some folk healers swore by a potion made with stewed owl, which was believed to quiet the mind and settle dreams. Others recommended drinking lettuce water. Not exactly a medieval latte, but it might do the trick. And if potions don't work, there are always herbs. Lavender tucked into your pillow, fennel garlands hung near your bed, dried hops bundled and tied above your head. The whole place might start to smell like a walking spice rack, but some of it actually helps. Hops contain natural sedatives. Lavender can ease anxiety. Even valerian, though the root smells like old socks, was a favorite among the sleepy and desperate. Some people try spells, quiet ones, a whispered verse before bed, a charm carved into a piece of wood and tucked beneath the mattress, maybe a saint's name repeated over and over like a lullaby. Some families pass down sleep rituals like heirloom stouch your right foot to the floor before lying down, or never sleep with your head pointing north, or avoid sleeping under a beam, because that's where spirits walk. Historians still argue whether most medieval sleep practices were based on superstition or early folk medicine, but in truth, it was often both. The line between healing and magic was blurry, especially in the countryside. Your village healer probably knows more about plants than the local priest, and her cures are a curious mix of prayer and plant knowledge. She'll crush mint leaves with honey, but also tell you to recite a charm as you sip it. Does it work? Sometimes. Maybe. Enough that no one's willing to stop trying. Even physicians had their go-to remedies. If you were wealthy enough to consult one, you might be prescribed warm wine with herb sore, more unsettlingly, bloodletting. Yes, some doctors believed that poor sleep came from imbalanced humours, and that a few ounces of blood drained before bed could relax the body. You, thankfully, aren't that rich, or that unlucky. And then there were sleep stones, smooth pebbles, sometimes carved with runes or Christian symbols. placed under the bed to anchor restless dreams. One friend swears she sleeps better with a flat rock beneath her mattress. Another wears a necklace made of jet, believing it wards off night terrors. You wear nothing, but you clutch a little twig of rue in your hand each night, just in case. But perhaps the oddest sleep cure you've ever heard of comes from the next village over. They say there's a man who insists the key to restful sleep is burying a piece of your clothing in the garden before bed. Something about returning your body to the earth while your soul rests. He swears by it. Others just swear at him. You haven't tried it. Yet. Not all remedies are ancient or magical. Some are simply practical. People learn the value of a warm drink, a heavy blanket, and quiet. That last one's the rarest of all. You might get peace on a snowy night, when the wind softens the world and even the goats stop muttering. But most nights are noisy creaking timbers, shifting straw, and the occasional distant howl. If your sleep is broken, you're not alone. Others lie awake in the dark, whispering to themselves or watching the firelight dance. Some drift off easily, others toss for hours. You learn to tell the difference by the way they breathe. And when someone finally sighs deeply and rolls onto their side, you know they've surrendered to sleep at last. And then there are the nights when nothing works. No herb, no potion, no charm. You just lie there, eyes open, heart thumping, thoughts looping like an old prayer chant. On those nights, sleep feels like a distant village own you can't reach by foot. All you can do is wait for morning. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the shadows are long, people talk of sleepwalkers. They say some folks wander the village at night without waking, eyes glassy, hands twitching. It's rare, but it happens. A sleepwalker once walked straight into the mill pond. Survived. Barely. Now they keep the door barred tight at night, just in case. But more often, sleepless nights pass without incident. You toss. You turn. Eventually, your body gives in. Not from comfort, but from exhaustion. You slide back under your blanket, tuck your feet in tight, and hope the rosemary helps this time. Sleep isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. And in a world full of cold winds, hard labor, and dreams shaped like omens, you learn to take rest wherever you can find it, even if it tastes like owl. The fire's burned low again, and somewhere in the night, the dog growls softly. It's the kind of sound that pulls you back from sleep, heart ticking a little faster, eyes wide even in the dark. Then a second later, you hear it, the toll of a bell, distant but distinct. 1, 2, 3 slow chimes. You freeze, breath held. That's not a church bell calling for prayer. That's the death bell. No one likes to hear it. It means someone nearby has died, sometimes during the night, sometimes just before. The church rings the bell low and solemn, one toll for every year of the person's age. You listen in silence as it goes on and on. 30, 31, 32. Whoever it is, they were too young. You shiver, suddenly aware of how thin your blanket feels. Medieval nights are not quiet. Not really. Beneath the hush of sleep, the world keeps moving. Dogs howl, wind shakes the shutters, and bells toll at all the wrong hours. Add in coughs, creaks, and the occasional drunk wandering home from the tavern, and it's clear that midnight isn't as still as you'd hoped. You pull your blanket tighter and try not to think about who the bell was for. Then the dogs start again. 2 of them, near the edge of the village, barking at something none of you can see. It might be a passing animal. It might be a ghost. People talk about both with equal seriousness. Some believe spirits walk more freely at night, especially during certain moon phases or feast days. If the dogs bark for too long, someone will get up and check the door bolt. You don't want to be the one, but you don't want to lie awake all night wondering either. Sometimes it's not even dogs or bells. Sometimes it's just illness. You've spent nights before with someone coughing non-stop in the bed next to you. Tuberculosis, they say. Or maybe just a chill that's sunk too deep into the lungs. There's no good way to know. So you lie there, eyes open, counting coughs, hoping for morning. Because nothing stretches time like a night beside a fever. And then there are the nights when something really bad moves through. The plague came through last year. You remember it too well. People coughed, and then they didn't wake up. Whole households went silent. The churchyard filled too fast. The bells rang every hour for days. Sleep during that time was broken, panicked, strange. You don't forget the smell of the herbs people stuffed into doorways, or the way everyone avoided touching. Even now the fear lingers. If someone so much as sneezes during the night, people shift away subtly. No one says it out loud, but everyone's listening, counting how many times. Not every illness is fatal, of course, but when it is, it tends to visit quietly in the dark. That's why so many people pray before bed, not just for sweet dreams, but for the strength to wake again. Historians still debate how much sleep was disturbed by these nighttime noises. Some suggest that people were so used to the interruptions, they just accepted them. Others argue that medieval nights were deeply fractured by fears both real and imagined. Either way, you know one thing, for sure no night is entirely peaceful. Not here, not now. That's why some folks keep charms above their beds. Not for comfort, for protection. A wooden cross, a tiny bottle of holy water, a scrap of parchment with a saint's name. Not everyone believes in them, but no one's brave enough to sleep without them either. You reach up and touch the wooden token hanging near your head. Just a habit, but it helps. And if the night stretches on too long, if the fire dies again, if the dogs keep barking, if someone moans in their sleep, you do what you've always done. You lie still. You breathe slow. You tell yourself morning will come. And usually it does. Sometimes, when sleep won't return, you count the sounds. 1 breath, 2 creaks, 3 soft snores. The rhythm of the night becomes your lullaby. You start to imagine each noise as part of a story. A dog barking? He's chasing off a ghost. A cough? A witch stirring her pot. A bell? A saint arriving to guide a soul to heaven. You let the images drift like smoke across your mind until your eyelids finally lower again. It's strange how even the scariest nights settle eventually. The dog's quiet, the bell fades, the wind dies. And then you're just one more sleeper in a room full of sleepers, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by shadows. The house breathes with you, soft and slow and steady. You wonder, as you drift off again, how many others are awake right now. Is someone in the manor house staring at their ceiling too? Is a monk pacing in his cold stone cell, whispering prayers against demons? Is a mother somewhere rocking a feverish child, hoping for one full hour of peace? Probably. The night holds everyone, not just you. In the end, it's not just your own noises that keep you up. It's the weight of being alive in a world where death never sleeps. But neither does courage. You close your eyes again, blanket tucked tight, and decide that if sleep wants to visit, it can. And if not, well, you've lived through worse nights. You breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Somewhere, far off, a rooster crows too early. You smile in the dark. The world is waking again. But not quite yet. There's still time to sleep. The rooster's call fades into the distance, but you don't move yet. You've learned over the years that there's a delicate art to getting up. Move too quickly and you startle the baby. Wait too long and your chores pile up before your feet hit the floor. Still, your bones ache. Your back feels like it's been flattened by a cartwheel, and your neck has decided to stiffen out of spite. It's another fine morning in medieval Europe, and your mattress of straw and shared body heat has done just enough to keep you alive. You stretch, slowly, careful not to kick anyone. Your sister is curled like a cat under the blanket, and your cousin's feet are halfway across your side of the bed. The dog is now sprawled full length across the hearth, having claimed it as his rightful throne. Meanwhile, you're trying to convince your toes to work again. As you push yourself up, you glance across the room and there it is, the bed, the real bed, the one piece of furniture in the house that actually deserves to be called that. Your parents sleep there, mostly. It's not fancy, but it's built from oak, lifted off the ground, and even has a carved headboard. It creaks every time someone rolls over, but it's better than the pallets everyone else shares. In medieval households, beds were precious. Not everyone had one, and if you did, it was a symbol of your rank within the home, not just your age. A bed wasn't just for sleeping, it was wealth, inheritance, proof that you'd earned some level of comfort. Beds were passed down in wills. If you owned one, you might literally die in it and be remembered for it. Historians often point to the bed as one of the clearest indicators of status in the Middle Ages. Nobles had 4 posters with canopies, laced with drapes, and covered in fine wool or imported linens. Servants might sleep on rush mats in a corner, or if they were lucky on, a trundle pulled out at night and shoved back under the master's bed in the morning. Peasants, you know your place. A pile of straw on the floor, shared, thinly blanketed, with maybe a piece of fur if winter's been kind. Beds were rarely solitary. In most homes, family members, sometimes even guests, slept in the same bed. It wasn't strange to tuck in beside a cousin, a grandparent, or even a traveling merchant if the inn was full. Privacy didn't exist the way we think of it. Space was a resource, and sleep happened wherever there was room. Even among the wealthy, beds weren't always just for two. In some noble homes, children slept at the foot of their parents' bed or beside their nurse. Servants might curl up on a nearby bench. The master of the house might receive guests from the comfort of his pillows. It wasn't unusual to conduct business or hear legal disputes in a bedchamber. After all, when your bed costs more than your roof, why not show it off? Beds were also hotbedspaden, the pun for superstition. Many people believed the way you slept could affect your health, your future, even your soul. Sleep with your head facing west? Invite misfortune. Sleep too close to a door? Spirits might steal your breath. Some swore by sleeping with their feet bound or their arms crossed to mimic holy repose. Others sprinkled blessed salt beneath the mattress to ward off dreams or worse. And if you wanted to get really fancy, you could have a testra wooden frame suspended above your bed, from which drapes or linens could be hung. Nobles and merchants used them not just for privacy, but also to trap heat and display wealth. Imagine lying under thick embroidered curtains while a servant reads poetry by candlelight. You, meanwhile, are watching a chicken peck a bug off your pillow. You rise fully now, joints cracking like dry twigs. Your blanket slips off your shoulders and puddles on the floor. The cold bites hard. You wrap your arms around yourself and cross the room, stepping carefully over your cousin's arm and the fire poker someone forgot to put away. You start your usual routine, pat the fire back to life, check the shutter, shake out your clothes, but your eyes keep drifting back to the bed. Not just your parents' bed, but beds in general. How strange that something so simple could mean so much. A bed isn't just a place to sleep, it's your place in the world. In some towns, a bridal bed is built as a gift, ornately carved, painted with flowers and birds. In other places, a dying man might ask to be moved to his best bed, so he can pass with dignity. Laws have been written about beds, debts settled by claiming one, land traded for a bed frame. It's not just furniture, it's identity. Yours, of course, is just a blanket on a pile of rushes, but it's your spot. You know exactly how to shift to avoid the lump in the floor, which end of the blanket traps the most heat, where to stuff your shoes so they don't disappear overnight. There's something oddly comforting in that knowledge. Not quite status, not quite luxury, but a kind of ownership nonetheless. Your sister finally stirs. The dog yawns, his tongue curling like a lazy ribbon. Outside, the village is waking up. You stretch once more, then stoop to gather your things. Tonight, the bed will be waiting. The same spot, the same lump, the same soft corner of straw that smells faintly of lavender and soot. You'll settle in again, tug the blanket over your knees, and fall asleep to the familiar shuffle of family, the slow hum of fire, and the occasional sleepy cluck of the chicken who refuses to sleep anywhere else. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of a grand four-poster bed, velvet-draped, warm and quiet, and entirely your own. Or maybe you'll just dream of not stepping on that fire poker again. Evening returns, slow and smoky, the sky leaking orange behind the thatch rooftops, as chickens roost and shadows stretch across the lanes. You're tired in that deep, bone-heavy way that only comes after hauling, kneading, lifting, scraping all the day's labour packed into your muscles like gravel. The fire's been stoked. A thin soup simmers on the hearth. The dog has already curled into his usual heap of fur and snoring. You sit on the edge of your bedding, rubbing your calves, grateful for the few moments of quiet before the rest of the house settles in. Somewhere outside, bells mark the hour. Not a death bell this time, just compline, the last prayer of the day for those who follow the rhythm of monastic time. In the monastery, monks are finishing their chant. You, in your little home, finish the last of your stew and lick the spoon clean. The day is done. But as the firelight flickers and you tug the blanket over your knees, you're reminded that your sleep tonight will begin and end in the sun's terms. Everything in your world revolves around it. You don't have clocks. Time moves by flame, shadow, stars, and habit. That means your sleep schedule isn't really yours. It's dictated by the daylight. In summer, you go to bed much later. There's still light in the sky by the time supper is done. The air stays warm longer, and chores stretch into the golden hours. You don't sleep as much during those months. Too much to do, too much light pouring into the house. You'll still wake in the night, of course, but first sleep is shorter. Second sleep often skipped. Some call it half sleeping, just enough to keep you upright. But in winter sleep is something else entirely. Nights are long, brutal, and slow. You sleep early sometimes, even before supper. The darkness closes in fast, and there's not much to do once it does. You might get a bit more sleep during these months, but you also wake more often. Cold has a way of interrupting you. A shift in wind, a log collapsing in the hearth, a coughing fit from the far side of the room, and always, that stretch of wakefulness between the two sleeps longer in the winter, with more time to think. You start to notice things during that midnight wake-up, the shape of your breath in the air, the way your mother whispers prayers in her sleep, the rhythm of the fire crackling down to ash. You notice how the dark doesn't feel empty. It feels dense, full of stories, superstitions, and quiet truths you only see when the world is still. Historians still discuss how seasonal rhythms shaped not just sleep, but emotion. Did people feel more hopeful in summer? More reflective in winter? Probably. In a world ruled by sun and shadow, your mood often follows the sky. You might not know the date, but you know the feel of late October versus mid-April by the weight of the air alone. And that means sleep is never the same 2 nights in a row. Maybe it rains. Maybe it's too hot. Maybe the baby won't stop crying. Or the cow kicks the wall. Or someone has a fever again. You learn to be flexible. You learn to nap in patches. To treasure a full hour of uninterrupted rest like gold. Sleep, for you, is a tool, useful, practical, necessary, not some luxury item wrapped in silence and candles. Still, despite everything, itchy straw, barking dogs, drafty walls, you do find comfort in this rhythm, in the way the day peels away, in the shared murmurs beneath one low ceiling, in the small victories, warm feet, a quiet fire, a dream without ghosts, and maybe even a night when no one has to use the chamber pot until dawn. You lie back now, arms crossed under your head, staring at the ceiling beams. Your sister is already asleep. The dog's foot twitches in a dream. The fire's almost out, but that's okay. The embers will hold a little longer. Your second sleep will come soon. But first, a little quiet, a little dark, a little peace. And now, as your breathing slows and the final ember fades, let the hum of this ancient world drift you even deeper into stillness. Picture the quiet, the soft shuffle of feet on packed earth, the fire murmuring low, the straw rustling as someone turns over just once more. The house has gone still. Even the chickens have settled, and the goat, for once, isn't chewing on your sleeve. Let your thoughts stretch out like fingers reaching into warm soil. You've worked hard, you've earned this rest. The day, with all its tasks and noises and small aches, is far behind you now. There's nothing left to carry. Let the weight of wool, of warmth, of sleep itself, press down gently on your chest. You don't need to move. You don't need to worry. The night is long, but you are not alone in it. Every sleeper around you adds to the calm, the hush, the sense of shared breath in the dark. The stars outside shimmer faintly through the cracks in the shutters. The wind has softened. The bell won't ring again tonight. Just the steady rhythm of sleep, yours and everyone else's. Let it take you now, down into silence, down into warmth, down into sleep. Sweet dreams. Good night.